Blue Star mother. She's a patriot in her own right. Her son served overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's even been on the cover of Time magazine. He's done his duty to this country. He's served, I believe, 14 years in the Army, and he's still serving today. When I approached Dawn to speak today, you know, in hindsight, I might have pushed her a little farther than her comfort level, and for that, that's on me. But I've prepared some words today that I think will do justice by her and the other families that have servicemen and women serving in the armed forces. The attacks of 9/11 influenced the people of our nation to unite as they had not done in many years. Neighbors and even strangers spoke to each other for the first time. Flags flew from houses and buildings that had never flown them before. In fact, here in Billings and in cities and towns across the nation, there was not a flag to be purchased for months afterward because the flag companies could not keep up with the demand. The attacks touched us all personally. One group of people who were touched by the attacks were our young Americans. And, as is always the case, these young Americans, both men and women, each a patriot, were stirred to take action. These young Americans stood up to defend our nation and join the armed forces of the United States. These patriots chose not to just be angry about the attacks. They chose to take action. They chose to run to the fight and to take the fight to the enemy. Young military men and women are amazing people. They do things that most people will not and cannot do. They endure incredible physical training and learn specialties that will help them and our military defeat our enemies. They do not think about what ifs. They only think about accomplishing the mission. One tour of duty or more, correctly stated, one deployment, would seem to be enough for any person. It would seem to be all that our nation could ask. But these brave men and women deploy time and time again. At first, it's for the nation, but with each successive deployment, it becomes more about being there for each other, for their brothers and sisters in arms. Our military members go through unimaginable things, and thoughts and memories of those things will stay with them for the rest of their lives. Our warriors are affected both physically and mentally, and they make sacrifices that the general public just cannot understand. Unfortunately, and as a result of the willingness of these brave warriors to stamp out evil and fight for freedom wherever people are oppressed, another group of people are also forced to make sacrifices. Those patriots are the mothers, fathers, siblings, wives, and children of our brave defenders of freedom. They're the ones who must remain at home and go about their jobs and responsibilities while worrying day and night about their deployed loved one. They can't just take off of work and shirk their responsibilities until their warrior gets home. They have to maintain. They have to do the same things the rest of us do, but they do it with the added weight of uncertainty, worry, and fear. They also do it with a pride that only a small percentage of Americans will ever know. The pride that comes with having a son or daughter serving in the United States military. Having your warrior come home from war is an emotional time filled with joy and elation. It is also filled with uncertainty and questions. Questions like, will he or she be the same? What should I say and what topics should I avoid? What do I do now? Will I be able to handle this? For many, the battle doesn't end when they return home, and often for their family members, the battle is just beginning. Approximately 30% of those who serve in the war on terror will suffer from post-traumatic stress. I have a friend who is an IED hunter in Iraq. He served multiple deployments and served over 20 years in the Army. He was blown up 6 times and nearly killed several of those times. He suffered very serious injuries and is still recovering from those injuries today. After returning home, he would be getting ready for the day and he would find himself laying on the hallway floor in the fetal position. He would have no memory of how he got there. It took several months for him to figure out the cause or the trigger that would create his PTS episode. You see, he had 2 daughters, and his daughters would be getting ready for school in the mornings about the same time he was getting up. And part of getting ready for school for them was curling their hair. And if they burned their hair just a little, and Gordy walked down the hallway about that time and smelled the burning hair, it would trigger his PTS and he would wind up on the floor to wake up later wondering what happened. This is not just something Gordy went through by himself. His whole family endured it. It was scary for everyone in the family, but they got through it. They learned what the trigger was and avoided it. That is just one example of many. PTS affects the entire family, but with time and treatment and counseling and understanding, the family can get through it with their warrior. Today, our warriors receive the best medical care that any fighting force has ever had available to them. Warriors are surviving injuries that were thought unsurvivable in past wars. Many lives are being saved, but that also comes with a cost. Some of our warriors are returning home as double, triple, and even quadruple amputees. Our very own Bo Richenbach, a Navy SEAL from right here in Billings, is a double amputee. The warrior and their family will be changed forever, and they will deal with things most of us will never know or understand. Long after the war is over and the rest of us have gone on with our lives, those families will be reminded of the war every day for the rest of their lives, selflessly caring for their warrior on the good days and the bad. There are also those families whose warrior never comes home, not alive. And those families are left with questions, and they will forever remember 9/11 and the wars that came after that. Today, I'm honored to have a special guest here. My American Legion post is named Andrew Pearson, Post 117 of Billings, Montana. And Andrew Pearson was a warrior and a true patriot. Andrew answered his country's call before 9/11. Andrew did 3 tours overseas in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and he was killed in action on his 3rd tour. And today I have his father, Ron Pearson, here with us in attendance. Ron, would you stand up, raise your hand? And I know how hard it is for Ron to come to events like this. When we first named our post after him and we invited him to every event, he couldn't come. Understandably, he wasn't ready to do that yet. But over time, Ron comes out and shows his support and helps raise awareness for what these families go through. So thank you, Ron, for being here. Military suicide is the 2nd most common cause of death in the military, preceded only by combat casualties and followed by traffic accidents. Military suicide is the highest it has ever been, and it's just one more thing a family has to worry about. Our warriors choose suicide. Our warriors who choose suicide do not mean to hurt their families, but they do. Families are left to wonder why for the rest of their lives. You see, our warriors make many sacrifices, but so do their families. The family member also endures enlistment, service, deployment, the return, and sometimes the aftermath of war. They have a stake in everything, and sometimes they are asked to answer a call of service to an individual, a family member, a patriot. So on this Patriots Day, I ask you to join me in remembering the fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, wives, and children of our brave warriors who have served and are serving in the United States military. True patriots all. 9/11 is Patriots Day. Let us remember the civilians and the police and firemen who lost their lives on 9/11/2001. Let us also remember the families that lost their loved ones that day. Let us remember those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the wars since 9/11 and the families they leave behind. Let us remember those who returned but whom left pieces of themselves on the battlefield, and let us remember their family members who deal with those losses and those missing pieces every day. Let us remember not just on Patriots Day, but every day. Thank you for being here, and God bless America.